الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على أشرف المرسلين نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. We continue inshallah ta'ala with the fiqh, and we start at مبطلات التيمم, what negates التيمم, and before we start, some had mentioned that the content is too much and it's overwhelming, but it's meant to be that way. It's meant to be that way for those who are, inshallah ta'ala, willing to study and to be determined, inshallah ta'ala, for this 1 year. And al-ilm requires, or seeking knowledge requires tabattul, to be devoted for it. And a student of knowledge is not someone that is really studying part-time. A student of knowledge is someone that is fully occupied with seeking knowledge. But alhamdulillah, we can recognize our weakness. So whatever time we have, we should do the best we can. But it doesn't mean that those who don't have enough time, that they should quit. Actually, they should continue. And at the end, everyone should have some form of improvement. So if whatever your capacity is, do the best you can, inshallah ta'ala, but never to quit something that you started, especially when it comes to the subject of seeking knowledge. So continue. And for example, the memorization, if you're not able to memorize all of the hadith and all of the ayat that we're having in the week, at least memorize something. For those who are not able to, especially from those who are from a distance, at least that you memorize something every week, and you come and you test it, and whenever you memorized and you're consistent, hopefully inshallah ta'ala, by the end of the year, inshallah, at least you had memorized a big portion. And this is going to be according to each and everyone's level. But to keep the intensity of it, which is not intense at all anyway, it's important for, again, if one person at the end was able to finish all of this the way it intended to be, mashallah, this is a great win and a success, inshallah, so that we can go to the next level. But again, it's a call for everyone to continue, inshallah ta'ala, and to be patient with these matters, inshallah. So we're in the tayammum, and we talked about the many different aspects and masail of tayammum, the definition of it, and who is valid for him to make tayammum, and the conditions for it to be obligatory, and the conditions for it to be valid. And we talked about the sunnah of it and the furud of it. Mubtilat at-tayammum, or what negates and breaks the tayammum, like we talked about mubtalat al-wudu and the like of this. He says here, wujud al-ma'. Wujud al-ma'. This is unique for a tayammum, when the water is present. Once the water is there, the tayammum is not valid. So if someone made tayammum, because the reason why they made tayammum, because there was no water, and they sought the water and didn't find it, so the person made tayammum. Once the water comes, the tayammum is not valid anymore. So wujud al-ma'. The next one, which is easy, يبطل بناقض من نواقض الوضوء السابقة. Anything that breaks the wudu, as mentioned before, breaks the tayammum also. وكذا بناقض من نواقض الغسل. And the same thing, that anything breaks the ghusl as a purification, as a means of purification. So anything that breaks. So for example, if someone made ghusl, made tayammum, because there's no water to make ghusl, and he broke his tahara by something that breaks the wudu. So does he have, and then the water comes. If the water comes, what happens? He's supposed to make wudu or make ghusl? Again, mas'ala here. Someone, he was supposed to make ghusl. Ghusl was obligatory upon him. He was in state of janab. And there was no water, and he sought the water, he didn't find it. So he made tayammum. And then he broke his wudu by something that breaks the wudu, passing wind or something like this. So he broke his wudu. And after he broke his wudu, the water came. Can he just make wudu, or he has to make ghusl? He has to make ghusl, right? Because the water came. And the tayammum that he did was to make ghusl. So when the water comes, that breaks the tayammum for the ghusl. But if the water didn't come and he breaks the wudu, he needs to make another tayammum if there's no water and he's seeking water and there's no water. So he needs to make another tayammum, but this tayammum this time is for the wudu. Even though the intention is not a condition. If a person doesn't have water and he made tayammum, but this is, he's making tayammum for wudu, not for ghusl. But the tayammum for the ghusl, of course, he's making tayammum for ghusl versus for wudu. So that's why he says here, لأنه بدل عنهما, because the tayammum is badal, is in place of both al-wudu or al-ghusl. And this is, as we heard before, this is a very important mas'ala just to keep it in mind. What is at-tayammum? Is the tayammum in place of al-wudu and ghusl, or the tayammum in itself purifies the person? So like you make wudu, you become in state of purification, right? If there's no water and you made tayammum, are you in state of purification, or you did something in place of the wudu? You see the difference? Because there's rulings will be according to this. If you choose which one or the other, I mean, there's difference of opinion among the ulama. As we said, most of the ulama are on the opinion that al-tayammum is only permitting the act of ibadah. So it's in place of wudu or ghusl, in place of it. And that's why if the water is present, it breaks the tayammum and you have to use the water to make wudu or to make ghusl. If tayammum was in itself a mean of purification, doesn't matter if the water comes or not, because now he's in state of purification. But it's not. The tayammum is just in place of the wudu or the ghusl, as Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentioned in the Quran. If you don't find water, then فَتَيَمَّمُوا. So anything that breaks the wudu or breaks the ghusl breaks the tayammum, because it's badalun anhuma. Badal, again, is in place, in exchange of something. It's in place of it. It's not original in a sense. It's in place of something. وَنَاقِضٌ لِلْأَصْلِ. وَنَاقِضٌ لِلْأَصْلِ. Which means the وَنَاقِضُ الْأَصْلِ نَاقِضٌ لِخَلَفِهِ. This is a principle that he mentions. وَنَاقِضُ الْأَصْلِ نَاقِضٌ لِخَلَفِهِ. Whatever breaks or negates the foundation or the principle, also it breaks what comes in place of the principle or the foundation. Right? So here, if they say here in the English translation, that is because it is replacement for them, and what nullifies the replaced act also nullifies its replacement. Right? So al-asl is what? What is the asl? What is the foundation here? What is the principle? Is the wudu or the ghusl? So if something breaks the wudu, very obviously it would break what become in place of wudu, which is a tayammum. Clear? So you look at it this way, the asl, the foundation, the principle is al-wudu wal-ghusl. This is the original ruling, to make wudu or to make ghusl. There's no water, or a person is sick, or whatever reasons, as we said, the things that permitted tayammum. So a person made tayammum. This is not the asl. This is not the foundation of, this is not the principal action. This is something instead of. So if something breaks the asl or the foundation or what the ibadah is, the essence of it, then of course it breaks what comes in place. That's the whole thing is about this. Right? So وَنَاقِضُ الْأَصْلِ نَاقِضٌ لِخَلَفِهِ. So anything that breaks the wudu or the ghusl breaks also the tayammum. So what's easy for us to remember what negates the tayammum? Anything that breaks the wudu and anything that breaks the ghusl, and then you add to it wujudul ma', the presence of the water. إذا وجد الماء بطل التيمم. There's no tayammum if the water is there. The next mas'ala, he says كيفية التيمم, how to make tayammum. We talked about the obligations of it and the recommended acts of it and what negates it. Now, how to make tayammum? And this is always in the chapters of the ibadat. You would see the same thing in salah, for example. What is the conditions for salah? What are the pillars of salah? Recommended acts, makruhat, and so on. And then how to make salah. which basically brings these things together in the kayfiyya, in the how to do it. Same thing with Hajj and so on. So kayfiyya to tayammum, and yanwi, that he has the intention that he's making tayammum. ثم يسمي, then to say Bismillah, the same as it was for wudu. ويضرب التراب بيديه, then he hit the dirt with both of his hands. ثم يمسح بهما وجهه وكفيه. He hits the dirt one time and he wipes his face and his hands. Right? His face and his hands مع الترتيب والموالاة. In that particular order, the face first and then the hands, because that's what's mentioned in the Quran. And of course, in the action of the Prophet ﷺ, والموالاة, that means with the continuity of these two things, without breaking anything in between, so that you don't, for example, someone wipe the face and then he's busy doing something else. Then should he just wipe the hands? No, he has to start over again to hit the dirt once and then to wipe the face and the hands. And the hands is the outside part of the hand, right? And as we said, what's recommended to do the between the fingers, all of that, that's fine. But this is how to make the tayammum. Only one hit to the dirt and to wipe the face and the hands once, and that's it. With the order, doing it in order, the face and then the hands, and with the continuity of it. The last point here is التيمم للجبيرة والجراح. To make tayammum for al-jabira. To make tayammum for al-jabira. Al-jabira is the cast. Or if you have a splint or whatever, there is a person have something wrapped on a wound or on a broken bone or something like that, that you're not supposed to take it off. Right? And he explains that. So it's not any covering. You know, if someone puts something on, but he can easily remove it, then he has to remove it and then he has to make wudu. But al-jabira is usually something that is not good for him to remove it, for the person to remove it, or it's very difficult to remove it. And the word al-jabira comes from al-jabr, when something is being fixed. So they give that name to the cast that they put on a broken arm or leg or something like this. Wal-jarah, wounds. He says, من كان بجسده كسور أو جروح أو قروح, whoever has in his body kusur, something broke, a bone broke, or juruh, wounds, أو قروح. قروح is the pusses, the things that, you know, any type of wound physically. وخاف ضررا. So there has to be something. And he خاف ضررا, that he feared harm for himself, بغسلها, if he washes it. And the fear has to be a real fear, not someone that has phobias, for example. So وخاف بغسلها, if he fears that if he washes the wound, water comes in onto it, or anything. وشق عليه المسح, and it's very difficult for him to wipe over it, because if you wipe over it, then there's no need for tayammum. We're talking about tayammum here. So if someone, for example, have his arm in a cast, and he's able to wipe over it, according to this, that's sufficient. So he makes wudu, and then when it comes to the time that he's supposed to wipe his or wash his right arm, he would instead wipe the entire part that he's supposed to be washing if it was exposed, right? And then he washes the left arm and he continues. And in that case, he did what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala commanded him to do. And there's no need for tayammum, even though some others, they said, and you still have to make tayammum. And that's why it's always said, to be away from the differences of opinions, make tayammum anyway at the end. But you have to wipe this cast that covering the place that's supposed to be washed with wudu. But if a person is worried that if he wipes over it, this might be harmful. Maybe a wound or something on the wound, they say, do not even get the water close to it. So in that case, you're not going to even wipe over it. So for sure, you have to make tayammum after you finish with wudu. You make tayammum for that udu, for that organ that you did not wash. You did not even wipe over it because you're afraid that the water can harm it. So tayammam laha wa ghasal al-baqi. He would make tayammum for it and he would wash the rest. Right? Is it clear? So at-tayammum lil-jabira wal-jirah. The tayammum for the cast or for the wounds if it's covered. So this is that you make the tayammum, that you would hit the dirt and you would wipe your face and your hands. This is if part of the wudu is covered and you cannot take it off, or it become difficult, or it's harmful. So then you wipe over the entire thing that is covered. And if you wipe over it, then there's no harm on you. The wudu is valid. If you're not able to wipe over it, or you fear harm, then you make tayammum at the end. Clear? And to be on the safe side, as we said, this is a side note, make tayammum anyway at the end. So you wipe over the organ that is covered, and you make tayammum at the end. He says, "Man adim al-ma' wa turab bi kulli hal." What if someone doesn't have water to make wudu and doesn't have even dirt or anything originally from the earth to use for tayammum, and there's no means for him whatsoever? Should he quit the salah? Of course not. He says, "Salla hasabi halihi wa la i'adata an." He would have to still pray in whatever state that he's in, and he doesn't have to repeat it. He doesn't have to repeat it if his situation changed. So this is something that people need to be educated about, especially when people go to the hospitals and things like this, and they don't find anyone to help them to make wudu or to make tayammum. And the time for the salah comes, what should they do? If they don't have the means, then they make salah in whatever state they're in. But it's not permissible to miss the salah. Even if they're carrying najasa with them, even the impurities are there, it doesn't matter. لا يكلف الله نفسا إلا وسعها. There's no burden for someone that he's not able to bear. فاتقوا الله ما استطعتم is a verse, or part of a verse that is always mentioned in matters of fiqh. فاتقوا الله ما استطعتم. Fear Allah, be dutiful to Allah to the best of your ability. So this is the best of your ability. You cannot do anything more than pray in whatever state that you're in. So this is for at-tayammum. And the wiping over al-jabira, or the cast, is like you make masih on the socks. It's masih. Masih means wiping. And anytime there is the word masih, means, of course, the tayammum is masih. The tayammum is wiping because you hit the ground on the dirt and then you wipe. So wiping, there's no water in there. This is if you're making tayammum. But if you're making the wudu, right? If you're making wudu or making ghusl, I hope I'm not confusing anyone. If you're making ghusl or tayammum, I'm sorry, no, ghusl or wudu, you're making ghusl and wudu, and you have your arm in cast. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala protect us all. You have it covered, right? And you wash the entire body. And after you do this, or before you do that, it doesn't matter. Then you wipe over the cast with water. I mean, you have some water in your hand, you let it go. You don't wash it, of course. You let it go, just the hands are wet, and you wipe over the cast. You wipe over it only, and that is sufficient. Like you would wipe over the socks. And if that is dangerous, or might be harmful or whatever, then you don't do that, and then at the end afterwards you make tayammum. Clear? Fine. And go ahead.
But regardless, you do tayammum, even if you can.
To make tayammum at the end regardless, this is to be away from the differences of opinions. So always make tayammum at the end to be safe, on the safe side. If there is no means to make tayammum, that means that's fine as long as you wiped over the place that is covered. If you're not able to wipe over it, then you have to make tayammum. What if you're not able to wipe over it and there's nothing for you to make tayammum from? Then you pray and there's no harm. Now, with the continuity, does the tayammum after the wudu requires continuity or not? Yes, because this is something that is part of the wudu itself.
No. I think the same. If the arm is the part of the body that's covered, we cover it in the part that you do.
Right. The question is with the tartib, with the order when the body is covered. Yes, you wash it or you wipe it according to the order of that organ in the wudu. So if it's the arm and the right arm is covered, then you wipe the right arm first, and then you wash the left arm. And I think there's some questions. What if the water is not enough for ghusl, but enough for wudu? What is the ruling? Tayammum. If the water is not enough for ghusl, but it's enough for wudu. Even though this question is not really, you have to make sure that this is true. Because if the water is enough for wudu, our wudu, the way that we do it now, The water that we have is sufficient to make ghusl for 10 people, right? So the Prophet ﷺ would make ghusl with 4 handfuls of water. 4 handfuls of water is enough for making ghusl. So if, just following the question, hypothetically, if the water is not enough for ghusl, but only enough for wudu, and a person has to make ghusl, should that person make wudu? At least he made wudu? No, he make tayammum. Because what's required is ghusl. And for ghusl, the entire body has to be washed. There's not enough water, then he makes tayammum for the ghusl. If a person is sick and can't get up to go to washroom, can he or she performs tayammum? Yes, if this is the case. If a person is not able to go to the washroom, that means if he goes to the washroom, he's going to harm himself or herself. There's a possibility for harm, or they're not able to, right? Either or. Person might be able to go, but this can be harmful. Then he doesn't go, then he should not go. And if no one to help and things like this, then they can perform the tayammum. If someone, and this is part of the good deeds that people should do to others, especially relatives and so on, is to help them to make wudu while they are in bed. And if it's difficult, then they can make, when a person is extremely sick like this, they can make jam'a as it will come. Jam'a, at least not the jam'a of the safar, but to delay salatul dhuhr, so that they make wudu, and then they pray dhuhr, and then they wait for a little bit, and they pray asr. And the same thing for Maghrib and Isha, and then Fajr. So it's 3 times. The last one is the wiping over the cast is like mash, or with like wiping, like making it wet. The wiping over the cast is like wiping over the socks, which is the mash. You don't make it wet. Your hands are wet, and you just wipe over it. No. Please, the next chapter is al-mashu ala al-khuffaini wal-jabair. The mash ala al-khuffain wal-jabair, which is the wiping over the khuf and the jabair. Al-khuf, the 2 khuf, which is the word khuf, if it's mentioned, it depends who is mentioning it. But al-khuf is the one that is made from leather, the leather socks. The cloth socks, with the difference of opinions, would be mentioned later, inshallah. Al-jabair is the casts, or the things that covers the wounds and things like this. Is the wiping over the cast is like, no, okay, we finished that. So here, the masah al-khuffayn, to wipe over the socks or the leather socks and the jabair. He says, al-masah al-khuffayn wal-jabair. قال ابن المبارك, Abdullah ibn Mubarak, he said, ليس في المسح على الخفين اختلاف. There's no differences of opinions when it comes to wiping over the khuffayn. No differences of opinions. The hadith of it is mutawatir. Mutawatir, 50 of the companions of the Prophet ﷺ, as even Imam Ahmad said 40, some said 50 from the companions of the Prophet ﷺ reported this hadith of masah al-khuffayn. So there's no differences of opinions. And that's why even the ulama, they put it, ulama al-sunnah, they mentioned al-masah al-khuffayn in the books of Aqidah. Why? Because there's no differences of opinions, and that made them unique compared to the other sects and deviant sects, like the Rafida and the like of them. They don't wipe. So, but what is meant here is al-khuffayn, which is made of leather. This is no difference of opinions among the ummah that this is something that is to be done, which is al-khuffayn. The valid differences of opinion, if it's made of cloth, that's a valid differences of opinion. But the one that there's no differences of opinions is al-masah al-khuffayn, which is made of leather. So whenever in the books of fiqh al-khuffayn are mentioned, the first thing that comes in mind is the ones that are made of leather, not the ones that are made of cloth. وقال الإمام أحمد ليس في قلبي من المسح على الخفين شيء في 40 حديثا عن رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم. I don't have in my heart anything against or unease in my heart when it comes to wiping over the khuffayn. It has 40 hadith from the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam. وقال, and he said, هو أفضل من الغسل. It's better even than washing. So this is a mas'ala. If someone has khuffayn on, and that also if a person takes the opinion wiping over the cloth, right, which is better if you have it on? To wash your foot or to wipe over the khuffayn? He says wiping over the khuffayn is better. if you have it on. Not that you have to, that you put it on to wipe over it. Major difference. No takalluf, that means to be at ease. And this is because of the hadith of the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam. When hadith al-Mughir ibn Shu'bah, when he went to take the socks of the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam, when it was about time for wudu, then they were traveling, the Prophet ﷺ told them, دعه, leave it. إني أدخلتهما طاهرتين. I put them on when they're pure, when they're clean. So leave them on. So if it was better, the Prophet ﷺ would have said, okay, sure. But it's not better. And this is not by one's reason. It's better to wash the foot. There's more this and more rewards. No. It's to leave the matter the way it is. But this is for the khuffain. And he says, لأنه صلى الله عليه وسلم وأصحابه إنما طلبوا الأفضل. The Messenger sallallahu alayhi wasallam and the companions, they sought what is best. So this is with al-mash al-khuffaini. Al-jaba'ir, al-jabira, the cast and the wounds, it's you don't have any other choice. It's not like which is better. There's no choice. And there's, of course, differences between both. The second mas'ala, muddatuhu, the time for it. One is how long a person can wipe over the khuffain. He says, يجوز يوما وليلة للمقيم. It's permissible a day and a night for the muqim, for the resident, the one that is not a traveler. And يوما وليلة, that means 24 hours, according to what our understandings. So يوما وليلة للمقيم. وللمسافر ثلاثة أيام بلياليهن. And for the traveling person, 3 days with its nights. So 72 hours. Right? So that's for the musafir. Why? I says وَتَبْدَأُ. But when does the time starts? Okay, so the time is يَوْمًا وَلَيْلًا, a day and a night, which is 24 hours. And for the traveling, 3 days and 3 nights, which is basically the 72 hours. But when does the time start? When do you start counting the day and night? From the time that you put your socks on, or from the time that you wipe over it, or the time when a person broke his wudu, there is differences of opinions. We'll just take, but here first, what is the mas'ala? The time. When do you start timing that it's permissible for you to wipe over the khuf? Because once the time ends, then it's not permissible to wipe if you still have it on. Here he says that the time starts وتبدأ مدة المسح من أول حدث بعد لبسه. The time here starts after the first hadath, after the first incident of breaking the tahara, after wearing it. And we'll talk about the conditions of it. So a person made full wudu and so on, and he put his khuf on, or his socks on. When does he count the day and night? He put that in the morning, right? It doesn't, the time, the stopwatch doesn't start yet. It starts when he breaks his wudu, according to this opinion. When he breaks his wudu, this is when he start counting the 24 hours. You might have heard, which is the most of the opinion that is present among the many of the contemporary scholars, which is also, from the 4 imams and everything, is not something new, that the timing starts from the first wiping. The first time you wipe over the socks, this is when the time starts, 24 hours. Right? And some said when you put it on. But we'll take it here as what's mentioned in the book here as a valid opinion, is the time that a person breaks his wudu. If you're taking the other opinion because this is what you've learned or you ask the people of knowledge, that's fine. Which is, again, as we said, from the first time that you wipe. But you need to remember what's in the book here. And this is what is mashhur from Madhab al-Hanabila, is that the time that a person breaks his wudu. This is the time that he starts counting the day and the night. Because this is what, makes according to this is what makes the mash valid, even though that you didn't wipe yet. But this is what counts for you. This is when, before that, the mash is not of anything because you are in wudu. So once a person broke his wudu, then this is when it's permissible for him to wipe over the socks or over the khuf, even though if he doesn't do it right away. So the mudda, the time. The third mas'ala here, shurutuhu, the conditions for wiping over the khuffain or the socks. First, أن يكون الملبوس مباحا. أن يكون الملبوس. الملبوس is the thing that is a person is wearing. مباحا, that means it's permissible. Permissible means what? How can the khuf or the socks be not permissible? If it's stolen or bought from haram money, as holes. Mubahan, yes, this will come, but mubahan permissible, I guess, yes, if it has big holes, it's not going to be permissible. But when they meant by mubahan here, either that it's not stolen or it's not from haram material. Like for men, for example, wearing harir silk socks, for example, right? If it's for men. So it has to be mubahan, permissible. Tahiran, the second condition, has to be pure, not having any impurities on it, because if it's impure, you have to remove it. The third one, ساترا للمفروض. ساترا, covering, للمفروض, which is the fard part that needs to be washed. So what is the fard in the legs? In the foot is all the way to the beginning of the shin. So over the ankle. So all of that has to be covered. So the short socks that people wear that shows part of the ankle or part of the foot, so it's not, sometimes it shows just a little bit the top of the ankle. This is not permissible. You know how the foot is? That is right on top of the ankle is still the foot. You know, so the first, where the shin starts, this is, all of that has to be covered. So ساترا للمفروض. ساترا to what is fard, to be washed. If it was not there, what is the fard to be washed? This all has to be covered. The fourth condition here is ثابتا بنفسه. ثابتا بنفسه. ثابت means يثبت الله الذين آمنوا, give steadfastness. So ثابتا, that means it's firm. بنفسه, by itself. It stays in position, covering the obligatory part to wash, but it's staying by itself. What does that mean? You know, if someone has a piece of cloth, you know, just put it like as if he's wearing it as if it's a socks, and he tie it with a rope. It's not firm by itself. It's firm by something else. So according to this, it is not permissible to wipe over it. So ثابتا بنفسه. So that's why, for example, old socks, that when you walk, you know, it exposes, it would fall. So that socks, you're not supposed to wipe over it. So ثابتا بنفسه. Okay, clear? ثابتا بنفسه.
So what if, like the socks they don't stand by themselves. You have to work. If you were to stand it by itself, it would fall.
No, ثابتا بنفسه. Okay, this is again with the word of ثابتا بنفسه, with the difference of opinions of what that means. Does it mean that you put it on the ground and it stands by itself? Or it means that when you put it on your foot and it stands by itself there? This is what is meant here, is that when you wear it, it stays. Not that if you put it on the ground, it stays. So because even the leather socks, if you put it like that, it collapses too. So what is meant here, that it stays firm if you wear it. And there's other conditions where, for example, Yom Shafi, that urfan, it's known that people would walk with it. Right? For example, and this is a debate when it comes to the cloth socks versus the other ones. They say you don't walk with the socks, with the cloth. You don't walk in the streets with the cloth. But what if somebody does? Doesn't matter. But is there a difference between walking in the streets and walking in the masjid? Or walking at the house? Where is that in the Sharia that makes a difference between walking in the house or walking outside? Like if you're able to walk in it, that means you wipe over it. But if you're not able to walk in it because you have to drag it, because it's not really holding itself, then you cannot wipe over it. So ثابتا بنفسه. The last condition, ملبوسا على طهارة. It has to be worn on state of tahara. So when a person made, as they call it, full wudu, that means made a full wudu, the foot is washed, and then after that the person put the socks on, or the leather socks on. This is what it's valid if he then later wipe over it. Otherwise, of course, if a person puts it when he's not in state of tahara, it's not permissible to wipe over it. So these are the conditions, that it's mubah, it's permissible, socks, and it's pure, covering what's supposed to be washed if it's not there, al-fard, ثابتا بنفسه, firm, stays firm by itself if a person wears it, and it's to be worn on tahara, in state of purification. Then he says صفة المسح, صفة المسح, صفة المسح على الخفين, how to wipe over the خفين. He says يدخل يده في الماء, he put his hands in the water. So that means if a person is making wudu, right, and you wash your hands and your face and everything, and you wipe your head and the nose, the head and the ears, and then can you, with the same water, you wipe over the foot? No. You have to get fresh water. But you let it go because you're not going to wash it, you're going to wipe. So يدخل يده في الماء, he put his hand in the water, ويمسح ظاهر قدم الخف من أصابعه إلى ساقه مرة واحدة دون أسفل وعقب. And he wipe over the ظاهر. الظاهر is what do you call the upper part of the foot, and wipes the top of the sock. Okay, there's no other formal word for it. This part, the top of the hand. This is the top of the foot. Okay, the top of the foot. So you wipe with your hand from the toes, on top of the foot, all the way to the beginning of the shin. To the beginning of the shin. Not you go, up there, but just the foot to the beginning of the shin. One time only, and this is a rule. Anything that is in the Sharia is to be wiped. It's to be wiped only one time. There's no such a thing as wiping 3 times. Wiped only one time. The head is wiped one time, and so on. So to the beginning of the shin, one time, دون أسفله وعقبه, not the bottom of it, and not the heels. The heels are not to be wiped, and the bottom are not to be wiped. And it's one time, and you don't have to cover the entire top of the foot with every small part of it with the masih, with the wiping. With your fingers not wide open and not tightly closed, just a normal way, and you just wipe over the top of the foot from the toes all the way to the shin, and that's sufficient one time, not the bottom. And of course, the famous athar, text from a tradition from Ali radiallahu anhu, he said, لو كان الدين بالرأي, if this deen was based on رأي and opinions and reason and so on, لكان مسح أسفل الخفين أولى من أعلى. If it was based on reason, then wiping the bottom of the khuf makes more sense than wiping over the top of it, because that's what you walk on, so you want to clean that part. But it's not about cleanliness physically, it's about an act of worship to wipe over the top of it. Now, the question with the shoes. I'll answer this one, inshallah ta'ala. So we're talking first about the socks or the leather socks, right? So this is how to wipe over it. The next part is what breaks it and what negates it. But since this is mentioned, so let's talk about this briefly. The shoes, a person can wipe over the shoes if these conditions are met. If the shoes is mubah, right? Let's apply the conditions. Say someone wearing a shoe. Can he wipe over the shoes? And of course, he's wearing the shoe and socks underneath it, which also the mas'ala of if you're wearing more than one socks. So one sock and one shoe, or 2 socks, or whatever there is. So if it's a sock and a shoe, it has to be permissible. So it's not haram. It has to be pure. It has to be satiran lil-mafrood. Whatever you wipe over, it has to cover what you would wash if it's not there. So if it's a normal shoe that shows the ankle from the side, even though if you're wearing socks, you're not supposed to wipe over the shoe because it's not covering all the way. It has to be boots or something, half boots or whatever it is that covers the part of the foot that is supposed to be washed. And thabitan binafsi, it holds itself firm by itself if you wear it, and you wear it on tahara. So if a person wearing shoes that covers and he wipes over it, that's fine. But then he would face another problem, because one of the things that negates al-masih, if the mamsuh, if what you wiped over, you took it off. If you take it off, then the masih is not valid anymore. You have to wash the foot the next time. But that's what the next mas'ala, which is مبطلاته, what negates the مسح or wiping. He says يبطل مسح الخفين بأحد أربعة أشياء. One of four things. And if you don't mind, we took many different points, 6 and 4 and like this. But what is required, at least, for example, if the exam, we'll not care too much about the exam, but if the exam, for example, 10 questions, there will be one question that the numbers, for example. So that means someone had studied it so that he can get all of it is correct, inshallah. So you need to, if you have the ability, inshallah, you should. Like, what are the four things that would negate wiping over the khuffayn? The first one, إذا نزع الملبوس من القدم. You don't have to mention it in the same words. That's why in this stage we're talking English. But then when you start taking it in Arabic, you have to be careful with every word you say. We have to use the language of ilm. We have to use the language of knowledge. We cannot just use our own ways of saying things, because this can be misunderstood. So إذا نزع الملبوس من القدم. If he takes the malbus, if he takes and he says the malbus because it's more general, instead of saying socks and khuf, whatever you have on, if you take it off, that breaks the masih. It has a difference of opinion, yes, there is. Because also what is most of the common fatwa in the subject, which is a valid opinion, of course, just taking it it does not break the wudu. You made wudu, you wiped over the socks, then you took the socks off. You still in wudu. There's no dalil evidence that taking it off breaks the wudu. But then next time you want to make wudu, if you took your socks off and you put them on back again, next time you have to make wudu, then you have to wash your foot. You cannot wipe over it again, right? Because al-mamsuh nuza'. So the opinions here, if what you wiped over, you took it away, that breaks, that it doesn't, here it says it breaks the masih. It means your wudu is not valid. Or the other one, your wudu is valid, but you cannot wipe over the socks again, you have to wash your foot. Clear? So he says, what one of its mubtilat, it negates it if you take it off. Number 2, إذا لزم كغسل الجنابة, if you have to take your socks off, like washing from janab. Making ghusl, of course, it doesn't work with wiping over the socks. You have to take the socks off to make ghusl or shower from the janab. Number 3, إذا حدث خرق واسع عرفا في الملبوس. If there's a big hole, عرفا, that is to be recognized by the urf, by what is seen, the way that people would perceive it, as it's a big hole in whatever the socks or the khuf that you're wearing. So how big, how small, there's no such a thing as it has to be that big of a hole or small of a hole. It's just a person looks at it and you would see, oh, that's a big hole in the socks, right? Like this. But small holes and things like this, it doesn't break the ruling of wiping over it. Number 4, إذا تمت مدة المسح. If the period of wiping is finished, then that negates the masih. Then it's not permissible to wipe again. And then he says, ويجوز المسح على جميع الجبيرة إلى حلها. الجبيرة, the cast or the thing that is for wound, you wipe over the entire jabir, not just the top part of the foot. So if the foot is in a cast, right, so you wipe over the entire cast, bottom and top, because the jabira is different. It's not socks, it's the jabira. You wipe the whole thing. ولو طال الزمن أو أصابته الجنابة, even if it's a long period of time, or if a person have janaba that he has to make ghusl. So this is the differences that he mentioned here between al-jabira and between the khuf. Al-jabira, the cast, you don't take it off after 24 hours because it stays for a long time. So the mudda, the time-wise, there's difference here. You wipe over the entire jabira, over the entire cast, which is basically that covers the fard. Different than the socks, you only wipe the top part of it. The socks, you take it off if you making ghusl for janaba. For the jabira, you don't take it off because it has to stay there, so you just wipe over it.
This means only the first condition, only the first mukti. For the cast, it's only the first muktil on other three done.
What negates the wiping.
There's mentioned four for the sock, but
Four things that negates the wiping over the socks.
for the cast, it's only the first one that applies.
Yes, if it's removed. Yes, the second one and the third one, but if there's a big hole in it. But again, if a person is not able to wipe over it because it's harmful, then he won't wipe, even if it's exposed. If someone has not wearing a cast and his foot is exposed, but a Muslim trustworthy doctor said, do not let the water touch it. So you keep it exposed. If you can wipe over it, then you wipe over it. If you're not able to wipe over it, then to make tayammum for it, even though it's not covered. So you would treat it as if it's a jabir. I wanted to, in the beginning of the week, to give everyone the hadith that we will cover in the week, but inshallah ta'ala we'll do it inshallah next time. Inshallah. So the hadith of today, inshallah. Let me get the hadith, inshallah. The hadith number 64. Hadith number 64. As you see, we're not going by order because of the different topics that we take. Hadith number 64. You can only memorize the shahid or the point of reference. He says, عن أبي السمح. You have it open. Say عن أبي السمح رضي الله عنه قال النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم يغسل من بول الجارية. يغسل من بول الجارية ويرش من بول الغلام. ويرش من بول الغلام. يغسل من بول الجارية ويرش من بول الغلام. The hadith أخرجه أبو داود والنسائي وصححه الحاكم. The meaning of the hadith is يغسل من بول الجارية. يغسل means wash. And again, as we said, what غسل means is that means the water is running. So يغسل من بول الجارية. البول is the urine. الجارية is the young girl. And الجارية here in this hadith means the girl that did not eat the food yet. Or ate the food, that doesn't matter because it's the ruling is to be washed. But in this context, al-jariya and then al-ghulam. Al-ghulam can refers to the child that reaches almost the age of puberty. The same thing for the jariya. But in this hadith, it refers to the babies, those who did not eat food yet. Not any babies even. Those who did not eat food. Not only maybe solid food is something that people might mean with it. Food. Basically, they're only dependent on their mother's milk. So if it's a female, if it's a jariya, if it's a girl, يغسل. The urine has to be washed if it comes on the clothes or so. ويرش من بول الغلام. And if it's the urine of the boy and he did not eat food yet, is يرش, to sprinkle water. And this is the nadh that we talked about. يرش, to sprinkle the water. That means it's not wiping, but and it's not washing where the water is running on it. It's sufficient to sprinkle water on it. That means the water will cover the surface without running on it. Without running on it. So there's difference here between the najasa or the way to remove the najasa of the urine of the child, male versus the female, if they both didn't eat food yet. If they both eat food, then it's the same ruling for the boy versus the girl. Males and females are the same. So it's only for them if they didn't eat food. The only one that is different is al-ghulam. So to understand it, al-ghulam, if it's a boy and he did not eat food yet, it is sufficient to just sprinkle water for the water to cover the area that has urine, and that's sufficient. Anything else has to be washed, whether it's the female before food or after food. Clear? And this is the evidence for it. And from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the deen, from the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam is al-risala, the conveying the message, and alayna taslim, and for us to submit ourselves. This is the rulings of it. And of course, it doesn't mean that this is not an act of ibadah. This is what is sufficient. But if someone washes a piece of cloth that a boy did not eat food yet, urinated on it, mashallah, that's good. Wash it, of course. But is it, when it comes here, the minimum requirement for the salah to be valid, for the clothing to be considered pure? So this is hadith number 64. Any questions? Let's see. Any questions related to what we said? The question, if there is no water and no dirt to make wudu or tayammum, can one only do actions or just hit the hands on any surface? As mentioned before, if that's the case, of course, because there's no water, that means you have to seek the water. And if you seek the water, if you have to go to the store, you go to the store. If you live by a river, you go to the river, like this, but without any harm or any difficulties or anything like this. So if there's no water and there's no dirt, if there's dirt outside, then you go outside and you hit the dirt. And so, like, if there's grass, but under the grass there's dirt, then you put your hand on the dirt and hit the dirt once, and you feel something in your hand. But if there's nothing like this, like in a hospital room or something like that, if you hit the surface of anything, whether it's plastic or anything like this, and you feel something in your hand like dust, then that's sufficient to make tayammum with. If none of that, then to pray in whatever state that a person is in, but never to miss the salah whatsoever. The next question here. The book translates it as sandals. Is that correct? Sandals don't cover foot fully. What is the definition of khuffayn? Khuffayn is, I guess the word sandals maybe is, khuffayn is the leather socks. Al-khuff is the leather socks, or shoes, or anything other than the cloth. The cloth, sometimes people would say it khuffayn, and some people they don't say it, but it's, the cloth is jawrabayn, al-jawrab or al-jawrabayn. And there's a hadith, 9 of the companions of the Prophet ﷺ, they mentioned that the Prophet ﷺ wiped over al-khuffayn wal-jawrabayn. Al-jawrabayn are mentioned in the hadith. So they cannot be khuffayn and khuffayn. They are two different things. And they use the word at-tasakhin. At-tasakhin from heat. They would wear things from cloth to make their foot hot, warm, and they would wipe over it. And plus, Sheikh rahimahullah, he said the Sharia does not separate in rulings between leather and cloth. There's no such what's the difference? But again, this is a very difference of opinions, and if someone just wipe over the leather socks, this is you can even call it the majority in some instance. Then here, there's so many questions here. If there is a hole in the socks, how big is allowed? As we said, the mas'ala here, it has to be kharqun wasi', big hole that is to be perceived by your own self. By people would consider that as a big hole in the socks. Urfan means it's obvious, right? You would see this is not a small hole. This is a big one, and it basically takes the purpose of the socks. Why are you wearing socks anymore? I mean, you're wearing socks to cover your foot. But if it's a big hole, why are you wearing it? But if it's a small one, and usually if it's a big one, it's no point of wearing it. So that's the one that is not to be wiped over it. And of course, if it's very thin, that you would feel your foot when you're wiping, like the female stockings or whatever they call it, this is not, of course, permissible to wipe over it. So as if you're not wearing anything. That's what the next question is. How thick should be socks? Sometimes socks look thick, but when you put them on, you are still able to see the skin under. If it's the toe is showing something like this, then it's okay, because also thin and thick is something that is relative. And some of the ulama, they said there's no such a thing as thick and thin, unless as if a person is not wearing anything. So the entire foot is showing, and a person, when he wipes, he feels the coldness of the water. Then that's not something to use or to wipe off. question Arabic: إذا تم نزع الخفين ونحن على وضوء ورجعنا لبسناه ونحن على وضوء، هل يلزم ذلك غسل القدمين أيضا إذا توضأنا مرة أخرى؟ مسألة here: if you took your khuf off or your socks off while you are in wudu and you put it back on, what is meant, what I understood from this, is that you made full wudu, right? You washed your foot and then you put your socks on. You didn't break your wudu. You took your socks off, right? Can you put your socks on again? Sure. Because you didn't break the first wudu. You didn't break the full wudu. The issue is if you made full wudu and you put the socks on and then you broke your wudu. If you take the socks off, you cannot put them on unless you make full wudu again. Clear? And I hope this is inshallah clear. What type of thickness of socks are permissible? We answered that. Must they only be leather, or can it just be the normal long socks that are relatively thick, like brand names are mentioned? It's any normal socks. Even doesn't have to be the brand names. Doesn't have to be sports socks. It can be dress socks, anything, even if it's light, as long, again, it's not something that very transparent that looks as a person is not wearing anything. Any question? With tayammum, is it necessary to have dust in your hand? You have to feel something. Like, for example, if a person hit the dirt, and can he let some of the dirt that is on his hand to go away? Yes, he can let it go, so that he doesn't have dirt on his face. If it stays on, but the feel of what matters here is the feel of the dirt, that your hand feels dusty. So this is what you wipe. And if you have solid dirt on your hand, you don't wipe your hand with mud, for example, something like this. We'll stop here, inshallah, because of the salah, so that people pray to rak'ah. And then after that, we can answer the questions, inshallah, after Salatul Isha. I'm not sure if those who are online will be with us, but we'll pray Isha, inshallah, and we'll continue with these questions, inshallah, after Salat al-Isha. Barakallahu fikum, wa sallallahu sallam ala Muhammad wa sahbihi wa sallam. سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك اشهد ان لا اله الا انت استغفرك واتوب اليك.
الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر. أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله. أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله. أشهد أن محمدا رسول الله. أشهد أن محمدا رسول الله. حي على الصلاة. حي على الصلاة. حي على الفلاح. حي على الفلاح. الله أكبر الله أكبر. لا إله إلا الله. الله أكبر الله أكبر. أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله. أشهد أن محمدا رسول الله. حي على الصلاة، حي على الفلاح، قد قامت الصلاة، قد قامت الصلاة. الله أكبر الله أكبر. لا إله إلا الله.
استقيموا واعتدلوا. الله أكبر. الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين. إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين. اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين. آمين. يسألك الناس عن الساعة قل إنما علمها عند الله وما يدريك لعل الساعة تكون قريبا. إن الله لعن الكافرين وأعد لهم سعيرا خالدين فيها أبدا لا يجدون وليا ولا نصيرا. يوم تقلب وجوههم في النار يقولون يا ليتنا أطعنا الله وأطعنا الرسولا وقالوا ربنا إنا أطعنا سادتنا وكبراءنا فأضلونا السبيلا. ربنا آتهم ضعفين من العذاب والعنهم لعنا كبيرا. يا أيها الذين آمنوا لا تكونوا كالذين آذوا موسى فبرأه الله مما قالوا وكان عند الله وجيها. يا أيها الذين آمنوا اتقوا الله وقولوا قولا سديدا يصلح لكم أعمالكم ويغفر لكم ذنوبكم ومن يطع الله ورسوله فقد فاز فوزا عظيما. إنا عرضنا الأمانة على السماوات والأرض والجبال فأبين أن يحملنها وأشفقن منها وحملها الإنسان إنه كان ظلوما جهولا. ليعذب الله المنافقين والمنافقات والمشركين والمشركات ويتوب الله على المؤمنين والمؤمنات وكان الله غفورا رحيما. الله سمع الله لمن حمده. الله الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين. إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين. آمين. وقالوا لولا نزل هذا القرآن على رجل من القريتين عظيم أهم يقسمون رحمة ربك نحن قسمنا بينهم معيشتهم في الحياة الدنيا ورفعنا بعضهم فوق بعض درجات ليتخذ بعضهم بعضا سخريا ورحمة ربك خير مما يجمعون ولولا أن يكون الناس أمة واحدة لجعلنا لمن يكفر بالرحمن لبيوتهم سقفا من فضة ومعارج عليها يظهرون وزخرفا وإن كل ذلك لما متاع الحياة الدنيا ولبيوتهم أبوابا وسررا عليها يتكئون وزخرفا وإن كل ذلك لما متاع الحياة الدنيا والآخرة عند ربك للمتقين ومن يعش عن ذكر الرحمن نقيض له شيطانا فهو له قرين وإنهم ليصدونهم عن السبيل ويحسبون أنهم مهتدون حتى إذا جاء أنا قال يا ليت بيني وبينك بعد المشرقين فبئس القرين ولن ينفعكم اليوم إذ ظلمتم أنكم في العذاب مشتركون. الله سمع الله لمن حمده. الله الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. سمع الله لمن حمده. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. سمع الله لمن حمده. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله.
Assalamu alaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Just reminders, you're probably familiar with the incident that happened in Plainfield with the family, the young child who passed away. May Allah have mercy on him, and then the mother who was injured. So just be vigilant, be safe, and be aware of your surroundings. Just wanted to make sure that you're all aware of that. And then secondly, with regard to the masjid, so alhamdulillah, we finished the construction for the wudu area for the men's. Tomorrow we'll start with the sister side as well as in the back washroom. So just be prepared with that. If you need to use the washroom, make sure you do it before you come to the masjid. So behind the washroom on the brothers, and then the sister side, wudu area will be under construction starting tomorrow. Jazakallah khair. Assalamu alaikum.
الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على أشرف المرسلين نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. There were some questions in the lecture before Isha, in mainly the subject of wiping over the socks or the khuffain. But before we start with that, inshallah ta'ala, with all what's happening in the world and around us, it's very important that the individual Muslim were to be very aware of, or much aware of, our hearts and ourselves, because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the Quran, one of the ulama, Sheikh Hafidhahullah, he wrote this today with regards to the ayah, وَلَا تَهِنُوا وَلَا تَحْزَنُوا وَأَنْتُمُ الْأَعْلَوْنَ إِن كُنْتُم مُؤْمِنِينَ, which means don't be weak and don't be in state of grief and sadness when you are the superior one, if you are believers. If you are believers, you're superior with your iman. The superiority of al-iman entitles for the person by necessity that the believers, they believe everything is by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The human beings are nothing but just means. And to witness with one's heart that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He is al-qahiru fawqa ibadi. He subhanahu wa ta'ala is the one that send whoever He wills for whatever wisdom that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has. Disbelievers, evil people, whatever there is, they have no power whatsoever except by the permission of Allah. So the hearts of the believer are strong because they rely upon Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. For them to worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala at times of ease, at times of difficulties, at times of being strong physically, at times of being weak and oppressed. This is the way of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala on the face of earth. And no one whatsoever would like to be always in state of weakness and being oppressed. But what if this is the decree of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala upon the ummah at a certain state? Is to still be firm upon the deen of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentioned in the ayah that in kuntum mu'minin, if you are believers. That means this is the now the time and the call for each and every one of us to fix ourselves, to be among the true believers. So the believers are the ones that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala push away from them the distress and things like this. And at the end, everybody shall return to Allah. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the most just. And no injustice and no evil would ever prevail. You know, after 100 years from now, everybody will be brought to the justice of Allah. So nobody will escape from the justice of Allah. And the real successful one is the one that is firm upon the deen of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and being obedient to Allah. And this is, no one can compete with the believers unless they become believers themselves. وَفِي ذَلِكَ فَلْيَتَنَافَسِ الْمُتَنَافِسُونَ. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to bring what is best to this ummah of the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam. The questions, if you want to leave, please go ahead, inshallah. But with the rest of the questions here, it says, if a boy infant is on formula, not mother's milk, before starting solids, does that count too? We were talking about the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ, hadith Abi Samh radiyallahu anh, that the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wasallam said, يُغْسَلُ مِنْ بَوْلِ الْجَارِيَةِ وَيُرَشُّ مِنْ بَوْلِ الْغُلَامِ. That the urine of the infant, the one that did not eat food yet, if it's a boy, sprinkle the water over the surface that has urine, that's sufficient. And if it's a girl, it has to be washed. This is what is sufficient. Of course, people now wash everything, which is fine. But as far as the salah to be valid, or the place or the piece of cloth to be pure. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows best. And of course, there's a physical actually differences. But again, I would repeat the statement of Imam al-Shafi'i rahimahullah for those who are not with us, that he said from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, this is the deen of Allah. And from the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam, al-balagh, min Allah al-risala, this message is from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. From the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam, al-balagh, conveying the message. Wa alayna taslim, and upon us is to submit ourselves to what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala commands us. So this is if both are not eating solid food yet and only dependent on the mother's milk. Once they eat solid food, they are the same. That means the urine is impure and has to be washed. If it's a formula and not the mother's milk, this is a new thing, but there is something that the ulama talked about. If some of the infants, they would eat from the milk of the goats. And some of the fuqaha of Shafi'iyya, they mentioned this. And they are upon the opinion that is to be treated as the urine of the adults, meaning to be washed and not to be sprinkled water if it's something else. So since this is no, as the ulama, they say, to be on the safe side, if a child is eating formula or something else other than the mother's milk, then is to be both of them to be washed and to be treated like adults' urine when it comes to the najas. Wallahu a'lam. And that's what is the next question. Is food here meant solids or does it include milk? It's only the mother's milk. If the child is only drinking the mother's milk. Other than that, is to be washed, Wallahu a'lam, fully. But again, this is nowadays, you would wash everything because that's what is easy. And the same question was Arabic. If water is very cold and warm, water is not available, can we make tayammum or wudu instead of ghusl for prayer? We talked about this, one of the excuses for making tayammum, if the water is extremely cold, but cold related to what? To according to what? The coldness has to be harmful, that a person fears for himself, that if he uses the cold water, he will get sick or he might die. Right? In that case, the person can do tayammum instead. Or if a person has a wound and if he takes a shower and that would cause harm to him, then of course, if the water is harmful to a part of the body, then he would wash the rest and then wipe over which is harmful and then to make tayammum at the end. But if it's extremely cold that a person fears for his life or fears harm that would afflict him, ad-darar yuzal, push away the harm, that means instead a person would make tayammum. If a person has the means to heat the water, then it's a must. He has to heat the water to use it for ghusl or wudu. Allahu a'lam. If urine gets on the underwear, can I put water on it in order to pray? Yes, the najasat, the impurities, and we talked about it, is to be removed to wash it away. So you don't have to change the entire garment, for example, if you don't have the means to do so. But then you have to make sure that you wash the spot that has the urine. So if you know exactly the spot, then you wash it, then that's sufficient. Washing it, that means water runs on it, on that spot. If you're not sure, but you know that it's the one side of the garment, for example, the front side of it, but you're not sure exactly which part, but you know for sure that there is urine. You say, Wallahi, there is urine, right? In that case, you wash the entire front of it. So to make sure that the impurities is removed to one's best ability. Two more questions. Can we do tayammum on brick wall if sand is not available? Brick wall is from a side, is originally from the earth. So brick wall can used for tayammum. And again, the criteria here is that when you hit the wall, you feel something in your hand. So you have to feel something. You feel there's dust in your hand, and then after that you wipe the face and then the hands. Practically in the environment that we're in here, I'm not sure if tayammum can be valid for anyone unless a person is sick, right? But when there's no water in the house, there's water in the masjid. For example, if something happens, if you have a pond and you're right next to it, then you have to use the pond, but not use the pond of someone else, and people would consider trespassing. I mean, if you can go to the store to get water, that means it's a must for you to get water from the store, things like this. But tayammum, and this is one of the special things for this ummah, as the Prophet ﷺ, he said, وَجُعِلَتْ لِيَ الْأَرْضُ مَسْجِدًا وَطَهُورًا. The earth has been made for me a place to make salah and a place to make tahara, purification too, which means there's no excuse whatsoever to miss the salah. And as the mas'ala also that we talked about it before the salah, if someone is not able to make wudu, someone is not able even to make tayammum, someone is in a situation where there's no water, there's no dirt, there's nothing, and he's just laying down in bed, may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give shifa and cure to all of the Muslims. If someone is like this and no one is to help him and no one is in the room with him and he has to make salah in whatever state that you're in, even if a person is carrying najasa on. Salah is not to be missed whatsoever. A person has to make salah in whatever state that a person is in. And this is well known in the books of fiqh, mas'alat faqid at-tahurin, the one that doesn't have the two means of purification, water and dust or dirt, that would make the person in state of tahara. The last question, also, if one has socks on and in wudu state by doing masih, if a part of the sock gets wet, does it nullify the wudu? It doesn't nullify the wudu if it gets wet, unless a person puts it under the water like this and it becomes something else. But if it gets wet, a part of it, it doesn't nullify the wudu, doesn't nullify the masih. And as we said also, the issue of the leather socks, no differences of opinions among the ulama in this subject whatsoever. This is Ahl Sunnah consensus among the ulama because the hadith of it is mutawatir. That's why they mentioned it even in the books of Aqidah, because this is unique for the people of Ahl Sunnah versus the Rafida and the like of them. Wiping over the socks that are made of cloth or wool or something like that, this is a valid differences of opinions among the ulama. So this is not an issue for people to fight with one another. Many of the Jumhur are upon that it has to be from leather, but the other opinion also, it's a strong opinion. We can debate, mashallah, but it's not something that would prevent a person from praying behind someone else. And as one time Imam Shafi'i asked about something, Imam Ahmad, about the opinion of Imam Malik versus others, he said if Imam Malik comes and he leads the salah, he would not pray behind him? Of course not, he would pray behind him. So this is ignorance. If people would not pray behind one another because the imam wipes over the cloth, socks, versus this and that. And one last thing is, when we discuss these things, someone would say, the Muslims, this is what's happening all over the world, and you're talking about these issues. Yes, and we need to talk about these issues. We need to make sure that our salah is valid, our wudu is valid. Every single detail, masail in tahara, in purification, in salah, in aqidah, in tawheed, this is what this deen is all about. And this is what our concern should be, to establish the deen. And this is the way to help our brothers and sisters everywhere, to establish the deen of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, because the situation that we're in today is because of turning away from the deen and turning away from the commands of Allah. So this is the punishment for this ummah, even though this ummah is blessed and it continues to be blessed. And no matter how difficult situations are, one of this ummah is better than the entire earth full of any other ones other than the ummah of the Prophet ﷺ, because it's ummah to tawheed, the ummah of al-haq, those who worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala alone, and they have this responsibility in them to be firm upon the deen of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Sallallahu alaihi wa sallam.